What's up, everybody? Monster Master Godzilla here, and I'm continuing the Godzilla-Thon. We're now up to Invasion of the Astro Monster, also known as Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, or simply just Monster Zero. And I have here my figure of Godzilla 1965 to represent the movie, and this is the only figure I have that represents the movie. I don't have any figures of any Showa King Ghidorah figures or Rodan from the Showa series at all, just this figure, okay? So this is the only figure that I have here to represent the movie. So I'm gonna place him right here. So what could I say about this movie? Okay, this one came out in 1965, a year after Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. So it's all about where in the it was during the time during the 1960s when the theme of space exploration was really popular. Like this time, in 1965, a year before Star Trek came out. This is where Godzilla ends up going in space. Yes, that's right. This is why they went a little heavy on the sci-fi. And this time Toho ends up having an American actor in this film named Nick Adams. And he's the only one who actually spoke English in the film. And so he wasn't dubbed over in English. But in the Japanese release, they actually had him dubbed in Japanese, since he's the only American in film who was actually speaking English. But if you get an English dub version of the film, he's the only one who's actually speaking English. So basically this is kind of before they have some movies where the Japanese are speaking English in some of the Toho Godzilla movies. So, what can I say about this one? The storyline, not as strong as some of the other movies. I mean, Godzilla's design, which we will talk about later. The coolest thing is that they introduced the aliens, called the Exilians. They're from a planet called Planet X, which is behind Jupiter. It starts off that the aliens being portrayed as a friendly race of aliens, they claimed that they were being attacked by King Ghidorah, which they call him Monster Zero. So, but then they they get the Earth's permission to use Earth's monsters to take on King Ghidorah. So they found Godzilla and Rodan, and they took him into space, took him onto the planet of Exilian, the planet X. So they're on. The monster fights they're on. Godzilla and Rodan took on King Ghidorah. The battle ends when King Ghidorah then retreats. And the funniest story is that they made Godzilla do this victory dance, which he's like this. That's how the dance was, and it was so ridiculous. It had no purpose in the film whatsoever, and it was hilarious. So Godzilla in this one, he didn't get that much screen time in this one. So it was kind of slow paced, but when you get to the monster fights, it's what makes it worth all the watching. Also, Godzilla's design. Ugh. I mean, I understand this is the 60s, but it looks so weird. Like, look at this. I mean, he kind of almost looks like the Cookie Monster, no? That's not Godzilla to me. He ain't no dinosaur like Cookie Monster. because I understand this is the '60s, but kind of because that's when they come off as that's how they made their suits back in the day. But so now found out the so then we found out the monsters. So then we end up finding out that King Ghidorah was actually in control of was actually involved with the so we end up finding out that all the King Ghidorah was actually in control of the Exilians the whole time. So we found out the Exilians are the bad guys the whole time. And Nick Adapter, she was in love with a woman. He was in love with a woman who ends up turning out to be one of the Exilians. But she was not supposed to love. Taught not to love, but she ends up fighting for her rights and ends up being in love with the Earthman. And so that's when they stood up for their rights and they found out the Exilians are vulnerable to high-pitched sounds. So that's why their whole walls are soundproof. So then, after realizing the whole truth about why they don't like sounds, the Exilians end up taking control of King Ghidorah, Godzilla, and Rodan. And so that's after that Godzilla ends up going on a rampage with Rodan. This is the first time Godzilla being a good guy from the very start, but already again he's a bad guy. The humans eventually found out the Exilians' weakness, and they used the high-pitched sounds, and it broke the aliens' control of Godzilla, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. And Godzilla and Rodan definitely had some funny moments where they realized they've been under control the whole time, like Godzilla shifting his eyes, like, wait, what happened? Where am I? And then they remembered he sees King Ghidorah, and they continue on kicking King Ghidorah's ass. And supposedly I hear that during the production, Mothra was supposed to join in the battle, but the budget was out of hand, so they scrapped her. Yeah, probably for the best, because this whole movie is like the same movie as... It's like a rehash of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which was a better movie. So, the battle was okay, but the final battle was a bit short. So Godzilla, Rodan, and Rodan fought King Ghidorah one last time, and the three of them all end up falling into the water. And only King Ghidorah comes out of the water, and he retreats, but Godzilla and Rodan never resurfaced, which made it seem like he defeated them both, which that's one thing I didn't appreciate, making it seem like Ghidorah won the fight. But I think in reality Godzilla and Rodan had beat King Ghidorah, and Ghidorah ends up retreating. So, would I recommend this one? Well, this one's definitely one of the weaker movies of the Godzilla franchise. And it does get better after this movie, and it can go downhill from there. And some of the movies can go downhill. Yeah, the Showa series does have some weaker films. This is definitely one of the weaker movies. Not one of my favorite movies, but I've seen movies that are way worse. I've seen Godzilla movies that are way worse than this one. So brace yourself, folks, for terror. So, if you're a hardcore Godzilla fan, you definitely give this one a watch. But if you're a fan of Godzilla and hard science fiction, this one's right up your alley. And I'll definitely... It's definitely not one I would... It's not one of the Godzilla movies I recommend as a starter, for sure. So, with that said, that's all there is to it. So, hardcore Godzilla fan or casual moviegoer, might as well try this out Otherwise, stay away. And that's all I have to say, folks, and I'll see you next time in the Godzilla-Thon. Next, we will be reviewing Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. And as always, stay awesome, my Monster Masters, and I'll catch you later.